There comes a moment when walking away becomes the only option left, not to hurt her, but to protect your peace. And it's often in that silence, in that space you create, that she finally sees what she never noticed before. Today, let's talk about how distance becomes the mirror that makes her realize your worth when it's already too late. Creating distance is often misunderstood as a sign of giving up, but in human psychology, space serves a very different purpose. When you step back from someone who has become used to your presence, it disrupts a pattern they've grown comfortable with. People adjust quickly to consistency, and they begin to assume that what has always been there will continue to remain no matter how they behave. Your availability becomes a background sound they no longer pay attention to. But when that sound stops, the silence becomes impossible to ignore. Walking away isn't just a physical action. It shifts the emotional dynamics completely, forcing the other person to confront what your presence truly meant in their life. When you were around, she might not have noticed the value of your support, your understanding, or your emotional reliability. These things were absorbed into the routine of the relationship. They became normal. Human behavior often causes us to register losses faster than we register blessings. So while you were investing, she may have been receiving without fully registering what she was receiving. Once you step back, the gap you leave behind makes those unnoticed elements visible for the first time. She begins to feel the absence of your energy, your consistency, and the security you once provided. And because these things are no longer there, she is pushed to reflect on how deeply they shaped her emotional environment. Distance also removes the emotional noise. When you are always present, emotions, reactions, and conversations can overlap and blur important realizations. But when you walk away, everything slows down. She has no one to project her frustrations onto, no personality to react against, and no routine to lean on. That stillness creates a mental space in which reflection happens naturally. This reflection brings clarity about how she behaved, what she overlooked, and the ways she contributed to the growing distance between you. Without your presence shielding her from her own patterns, she is confronted by them. The discomfort that arises from this realization often becomes the foundation of her understanding of your worth. Your absence also highlights the emotional stability you once provided. People tend to underestimate the value of someone who brings calm, balance, and reliability into their lives. These qualities do not make noise, so they rarely get immediate recognition. But once they are gone, the emotional environment becomes unstable. She begins to experience the emotional gaps that your presence used to fill automatically. Moments that were once easy become stressful. Decisions that once felt supported now feel heavy. The contrast between life with you and life without you becomes sharper and more undeniable. This contrast creates the clarity she didn't have when you were right in front of her. Another important aspect of distance is that it interrupts the cycle of emotional dependency. When she knows you are always there, her mind relaxes into the comfort of permanence. That comfort often leads to negligence, not out of malice, but out of familiarity. Walking away disrupts this illusion of permanence. It forces her to acknowledge that relationships do not survive on assumptions. Emotional investment must be returned in some form. Your withdrawal reminds her that effort is required and that your presence was not guaranteed but chosen. This awareness often arrives too late, but it arrives with unexpected intensity. Space also functions as a mirror. When you are no longer directly interacting with her, she sees her actions without defensive justifications. She remembers conversations, your warnings, your expressions of hurt, and your attempts to fix things. These memories gain new meaning when she no longer has access to your presence. Your silence becomes a powerful form of communication, one that says more than repeated explanations ever could. She begins to realize that the distance you created was not a punishment, but a consequence of a pattern she ignored. Walking away gives her the opportunity to feel the full weight of what she once had. Without your presence absorbing the emotional imbalance, she finally experiences the emptiness that your support once filled. This clarity does not come in a single moment. It develops slowly as days without you begin to highlight the depth of the role you played in her life. One of the most underestimated aspects of human relationships is the way consistent effort can become invisible over time. When you are constantly investing your time, energy, and care into someone, those actions gradually blend into the background of their daily life. People begin to expect what you do as normal, and they may fail to acknowledge the effort behind it. Acts of patience, understanding, and emotional support are often taken for granted because they do not demand attention in the moment. Your presence becomes a constant, and constant things are rarely valued until they are gone. The absence of your presence interrupts this normalization, and the efforts you once made suddenly become obvious in their absence. When you step away, it disrupts the pattern she has grown accustomed to. She no longer has someone who consistently shows up, checks in, or prioritizes her emotional needs. The routine gestures that once seemed small or ordinary now appear significant because they are missing. Simple acts like listening attentively, remembering important details, or offering support at critical moments gain weight and clarity when they are no longer there. Your absence removes the safety net she unconsciously relied upon, revealing how much you contributed to the emotional balance of the relationship. Effort in relationships is not always dramatic. It often shows up in the subtle ways that maintain trust and stability. Over time, these subtleties can go unnoticed because they do not demand immediate recognition. Emotional labor, compromise, and patience are not as visible as grand gestures, but they form the foundation of meaningful connection. When you walk away, these invisible contributions become tangible because she now experiences their absence. She begins to notice the emotional gaps, the lack of support, and the difference in how life feels without your consistent presence. The value of your effort becomes undeniable when the results of that effort are no longer available to her. Absence also prompts reflection on choices. When someone is constantly receiving care and attention without interruption, they may overlook the intentionality behind it. They assume that your actions are effortless or automatic. Distance forces her to recall the moments when you went out of your way, made sacrifices, or stayed calm in difficult situations. She begins to understand the dedication that underpinned your presence. By comparing her current experience without you to the past with you, she sees the true extent of what she had, and the recognition can be both enlightening and painful. Your absence also creates contrast with others. When someone has been accustomed to your effort, they naturally compare the care you offered to what they experience elsewhere. The emotional support, thoughtfulness, and consistency you provided become benchmarks for what they now notice is missing. These comparisons can be stark, emphasizing just how much they undervalued your presence. The absence of your effort highlights the quality and consistency of what you brought to the relationship, which is often only fully recognized when it is no longer available. Another aspect of this process is self-awareness. Your absence gives her the space to examine her own behavior and its impact on the relationship. She may realize that she failed to reciprocate your effort or that she took your presence for granted. The clarity that comes with this reflection often brings regret. She begins to see that your contributions were intentional and meaningful, not automatic. Every time she notices a void where your support once existed, she gains insight into the depth of your involvement and the sacrifices you made to maintain the relationship. Finally, the emotional weight of your absence creates a heightened appreciation for your past actions. Actions that once seemed small or ordinary now carry a sense of significance. The care, attention, and effort you consistently demonstrated are now seen for what they truly were: deliberate choices made to strengthen the bond. By stepping away, you allow her to experience the reality of her dependence on your efforts, and this awareness often emerges with clarity that was impossible to achieve while you were present. When someone experiences the absence of a person they were emotionally close to, it often triggers deep self-reflection. This reflection is not immediate, and it rarely comes without some discomfort. The human mind tends to resist acknowledging mistakes or shortcomings when the person is constantly present to soothe, explain, or compromise. But when you step away, the safety net that allowed her to ignore her own behavior disappears. She is left alone with her thoughts, and in that quiet, she begins to evaluate her actions, her patterns, and the ways she contributed to the distance between you. This self-reflection often brings clarity that was previously blocked by familiarity and routine. One of the first things she may notice is how her own reactions impacted the relationship. She begins to recall moments when she may have dismissed your feelings, ignored your needs, or failed to acknowledge your efforts. These realizations are often uncomfortable because they challenge her self-perception. People naturally want to see themselves in a positive light, but distance exposes the gaps between intention and action. She starts to understand that her emotional responses or lack of awareness played a role in creating the space that now exists between you. The process of reflection often leads to the recognition of patterns. She may notice recurring behaviors that caused friction or led to misunderstandings. Perhaps she realizes that she became emotionally unavailable at critical times, reacted defensively to honest feedback, or prioritized her own convenience over mutual growth. These insights are rarely superficial. They are the result of introspection that distance enables. By analyzing her past behavior in your absence, she begins to understand the consequences of her actions and how they contributed to your decision to step back. Another important aspect of this reflection is emotional accountability. When someone is constantly present, it is easy to externalize blame, to assume that the other person is responsible for any tension or unhappiness. But when you are no longer there, she cannot deflect responsibility as easily. She is forced to confront the truth of her own role in the relationship dynamic. This accountability is crucial because it transforms regret from a vague feeling into a specific awareness of the actions, choices, and patterns that led to your withdrawal. She begins to recognize that her behavior mattered more than she initially thought. The absence also allows her to evaluate the emotional effort you consistently provided. While she may have overlooked your patience, support, or understanding when you were present, distance amplifies the contrast. She begins to see the ways she may have taken your care for granted or failed to reciprocate in meaningful ways. This recognition does not come only from observing your absence, but also from reflecting on her own contributions. By analyzing her emotional behavior, she gains insight into what she failed to do, how she could have acted differently, and the role her behavior played in creating the void now felt acutely. Reflection is further reinforced by memory and emotional cues. She recalls moments of conflict, missed opportunities for connection, and times when she may have acted out of defensiveness or indifference. These memories are filtered through the lens of your absence, which magnifies their significance. The clarity she gains is often sharper than any explanation or argument could have provided while you were present. She begins to recognize the cumulative impact of small actions, the subtle ways she may have hurt you, and the repeated patterns that eroded the emotional closeness you once shared. Finally, the act of reflecting on her emotional behavior often triggers a deeper understanding of your role in her life. She starts to see that your presence was not just a convenience, but a stabilizing force, a source of support, and a model of consistent care. Her self-reflection exposes the gap between what she offered and what you provided, and this awareness grows stronger as she continues to analyze her behavior over time. Human beings are naturally wired to seek comfort and stability, often prioritizing what feels easy over what is meaningful. In relationships, this tendency can lead someone to take consistent support and care for granted. When you are constantly present, providing emotional stability and being a reliable partner, she may unconsciously assume that your efforts will never cease. This sense of permanence can create a false sense of security where she undervalues the very foundation of comfort you offer. It is only when you walk away and that comfort disappears that the depth of your contribution becomes apparent and regret begins to emerge. Regret in this context is not immediate. It is a process that unfolds over time. At first, she may experience a vague sense of unease or a feeling that something is missing. The daily routines and emotional rhythms that once included you are disrupted, leaving a noticeable void. Simple moments like sharing a laugh, receiving reassurance, or feeling supported during challenges are now absent. These gaps highlight how your presence once served as a stabilizing force in her life. As the absence continues, she starts to consciously recognize that what she once overlooked was significant and meaningful. Comfort often masks appreciation. When a relationship is stable and supportive, she may have equated your consistency with entitlement rather than choice. She may have expected that you would always be there, believing that the effort, patience, and understanding you offered required little acknowledgement. When the comfort of your presence is suddenly gone, this assumption is shattered. She begins to realize that maintaining such stability required deliberate care and consistent emotional investment on your part. The absence turns everyday support into a tangible loss, making her aware of the value she previously ignored. The emotional impact of losing comfort is amplified by comparison. She may notice that others around her do not provide the same level of understanding, patience, or reliability that you once did. This contrast makes the absence of your presence even more significant. What once felt ordinary now stands out as extraordinary. Each interaction she experiences without you becomes a subtle reminder of what she took for granted. This realization can trigger a profound sense of regret, as she acknowledges that she did not fully appreciate your presence while she had it. Regret also arises from the recognition of missed opportunities. While you were present, she may have failed to reciprocate your efforts, engage deeply, or prioritize the relationship in ways that mattered. The disappearance of comfort highlights these missed opportunities because she no longer has the immediate chance to correct them. She starts reflecting on moments where she could have expressed gratitude, shown more care, or responded with understanding, realizing that her inaction contributed to the growing distance. The absence of your stabilizing presence becomes a lens through which she examines her own choices and their consequences. Another layer of regret is tied to emotional dependence. While you were consistently there, she may have relied on you to manage stress, provide reassurance, or mediate conflicts. Your presence became a cushion against the difficulties of life, and she may not have recognized the effort required to maintain that support. When you step away, she experiences those challenges without the buffer you once provided. The discomfort and stress of navigating life without your support bring a new awareness of how significant your role had been, deepening her sense of regret. The awareness of loss often leads to heightened emotional sensitivity. She begins to notice the absence of small gestures, thoughtful actions, and the emotional stability you contributed to her life. Each moment without you reinforces the contrast between life with you and life without you. The clarity that emerges from this absence is often startling as she comes to fully grasp the weight of what she had and the consequences of taking it for granted. The disappearance of comfort creates a powerful emotional mirror, reflecting the value of your presence in ways she never fully recognized before. Comparison is a natural human response when we experience loss or change in relationships. When you walk away, she is often confronted with a gap in her life that she previously ignored. This absence triggers a mental process in which she begins to measure what she had against what she currently experiences. The comparisons are not only about tangible actions, but also about emotional support, reliability, and the sense of stability you provided. This is a process rooted in psychology. Humans tend to recognize value most clearly when it is no longer present, and the act of comparison becomes a powerful lens for realizing what was lost. Initially, these comparisons might be subtle. She may notice how other people in her life treat her, how little effort they invest, or how different their emotional responses feel. These observations often highlight the qualities you consistently demonstrated, such as patience, attentiveness, and understanding. What she once overlooked because it was routine now appears exceptional because the standard she unconsciously measured against, your presence, is absent. The contrast between what you offered and what she now receives becomes increasingly apparent, and this realization can be uncomfortable as it challenges her assumptions about the value of her previous relationship with you. Comparison also extends to behavior and emotional maturity. She may begin to notice that other people are not as thoughtful or consistent in their communication. Where you are reliable, present, and emotionally intelligent, others may seem distracted, reactive, or indifferent. These differences bring clarity about the emotional labor you contributed to the relationship. The lack of equivalent effort elsewhere makes her recognize that what she once considered normal or taken for granted was, in fact, extraordinary. This realization often comes with an emotional intensity that forces her to confront the depth of what she lost. Your absence creates a natural benchmark. By stepping back, you allow her to see what a relationship looks like without your influence. Every interaction she experiences without you becomes a comparison point, consciously or unconsciously reinforcing your value. She begins to evaluate moments when she may have dismissed your efforts, underestimated your patience, or failed to appreciate your emotional support. The comparisons highlight both the quality of what you provided and the ways in which she contributed or failed to contribute within the relationship dynamic. Psychologically, comparison is a mechanism for learning and reflection. Through comparing current experiences with past experiences, she gains insight into the significance of your presence. She recalls moments of compromise, moments of understanding, and the times you prioritized her needs above your own convenience. Without you present, these memories are no longer overshadowed by routine interaction, and their value becomes more pronounced. Each comparison reinforces the uniqueness of your contributions and the ways she may have failed to recognize them in real time. Comparison also influences emotional response. When she sees that others do not meet the standard you set, feelings of regret, longing, and even guilt may intensify. She begins to question her own behavior and decisions, realizing that she may have taken your consistency and dedication for granted. The act of comparing is not just analytical, it is deeply emotional. It engages both her memory of past experiences and her current dissatisfaction with what she now receives, making the contrast between your efforts and others' efforts impossible to ignore. Finally, comparison shapes perspective about future choices. She may begin to understand that what you provided was not merely a matter of circumstance, but a deliberate, consistent effort that required emotional investment. By observing differences between you and others, she gains clarity about the qualities she values, the effort she now realizes is important, and the consequences of having ignored these qualities when you were present. Each comparison reinforces the recognition of your worth and highlights the gap created by your absence, making the realization of your value increasingly undeniable. When someone experiences the absence of a person who played a significant emotional role in their life, a natural response can be the desire to reconnect. This is not simply about missing the person. It is a response to the realization of what they once had and what they failed to fully appreciate. The human mind often recognizes value only when it is absent, and emotional gaps create a heightened awareness of previous care, attention, and stability. The desire to reconnect is rooted in the recognition that the relationship had qualities that are difficult to replace or replicate elsewhere. This process often begins subtly. She may reach out to see if you are available, or she may attempt to initiate conversations in smaller ways. Even before she explicitly communicates, she starts evaluating her own feelings and the emotional impact of your absence. The recognition that the relationship provided more than just companionship, emotional support, understanding, consistency, creates an internal push toward reconnection. She becomes more aware of the moments where she may have acted carelessly or failed to reciprocate the attention and effort you invested, and this reflection triggers a motivation to bridge the gap she now feels. Emotional awareness plays a central role in this desire to reconnect. She begins to identify the void your absence has left, not only in practical terms, but also in emotional terms. The absence highlights the support you offered, the patience you maintained during difficult moments, and the trust and stability you created. When she attempts to reconnect, it is often an effort to regain not only your presence, but also the emotional equilibrium that was once a consistent part of her life. This attempt is fueled by an understanding, sometimes unconscious, that what she had was rare and meaningful. The psychology behind wanting to reconnect is also tied to regret and longing. After reflecting on her own behavior and the value of your contributions, she may feel a sense of urgency. The mind naturally seeks closure or resolution when confronted with loss. She may think about the moments she overlooked, the words she should have said, or the actions she could have taken differently. This combination of regret and longing compels her to reach out, attempting to restore what she now recognizes as irreplaceable. Her desire to reconnect is amplified by the emotional contrast between your consistent care and the absence she now experiences. Comparison reinforces this impulse. When she sees that others cannot replicate the level of understanding, support, or patience you provided, she realizes the uniqueness of what she lost. Each interaction without you becomes a benchmark for what is missing. This realization intensifies the desire to reconnect because it confirms that the qualities you brought to the relationship were not just appreciated by her, but were fundamentally significant to her emotional well-being. The contrast between what you offered and what she now experiences creates both awareness and motivation. However, the desire to reconnect is not purely about wanting to restore familiarity. It is also about acknowledgement and accountability. She begins to understand that the relationship required effort, empathy, and intentionality, qualities she may not have fully recognized when you were present. Her attempts to reconnect are often intertwined with a need to make amends or demonstrate that she now values the efforts she once overlooked. This psychological process is driven by the human instinct to repair emotional imbalances and seek relational closure, as well as the hope of regaining the stability and care that your presence provided. Finally, the drive to reconnect is reinforced by memory and reflection. She recalls the consistency, patience, and emotional reliability you offered over time. These memories create a sense of emotional scarcity where she recognizes that similar experiences are rare and difficult to find. The combination of reflection, comparison, and emotional absence produces a strong internal motivation to reach out. Her desire to reconnect grows from an increasing awareness of your irreplaceable value and the emotional gaps left by your departure.